Today I have a distinguished guest, Mr. Gilles Amadou, who is going to talk to us about public speaking, a subject that scares many of us. Personally, I'm working on it, but I know I'm not the only one. There are many people who don't develop certain aspects of their lives or remain stagnant in their lives simply because they're afraid to face public speaking. So today with Gilles, who is an expert in this field, we're going to try to get some tips that can help us face this challenge, specifically to help us feel a bit more comfortable when speaking in public. So first, let's welcome Gilles to Self-Upgrade. Hello, Gilles. How are you today?
Hello, Aida. I'm doing very well. Thank you. And you?
I'm good. I'm doing very well. First of all, Gilles, I know you're someone who's very busy. You have a lot to do, but even so, you managed to give us this moment to share today. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's always an honor to be on a platform to talk about things you're passionate about.
We were just talking about it before we started the interview. As I was telling you, for me personally, public speaking, speaking in public is not something that comes naturally to me. And I know you have training, so you have several years of expertise in that area. So first of all, can you tell us about yourself, who you are, and also about your background in the business world, as well as your expertise in public speaking?
With great pleasure. I try to keep it short so as not to bore my audience. Because one of the things about public speaking is not to talk for too long. I am Gilles Amadou Acogny. I am the son of a Senegalese woman, the first woman in politics in Africa. In the 1950s, she was a municipal councillor on Gorée Island. And of a man who started his studies late, but who was always first, with no one in second place. His name is Togon Servé Acogny. My parents are watching us from above, from the hereafter. Today, I am the second to last of the family of 6 children. And I have had a professional career, diversified. First, I started by studying in different countries. Since we lived in the United States, I'll keep it brief, but we lived on almost every continent except Asia for a long time. But I personally have also lived on every continent. After quite a long period of study, I worked in the corporate world, and in particular in a company that has the reputation of being the company that trains the best salespeople in the world. But today, many young people wouldn't even know it. This company is called Xerox. I spent 15 years at Xerox, and very early on I held management positions. At 33, I was the general manager of the subsidiary, the largest one in Africa, Xerox Egypt. I had a manufacturing plant with 300 people. Before that, I was a sales manager at Xerox in the United States. I was the only foreigner among 500 sales managers, and I was lucky enough to be the number one sales manager in the United States for 7 months. That was in 93. In 94, I took up my position in Egypt. And in a market that grows by 2 to 3% per year, we achieved growth of 10% in terms of revenue and 20% in terms of profits. And that was thanks to the human capital I had. But it's also thanks to the fact that I mobilized the human capital, I gathered all my high potentials and told them to develop the company's strategy for the next 10 years. And some of them were promoted and went on to have very successful careers. In particular, one of them became the human resources director for Vodafone for the entire sub-region. And then after that, I became the marketing director at Xerox in Germany, which was one of the 3 largest Xerox subsidiaries in Europe, before taking on the role of non-executive marketing director for Xerox in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. That sums up my 15-year career at Xerox. And during those 15 years, I received 15 days of training each year. That is not something trivial, because those 15 days of training allowed me to learn all the ins and outs of sales, marketing, product production, new products, so product manufacturing, but also the marketing positioning of products. And then I also learned to speak in public, naturally. Because when you are trained in sales, you learn to speak in public. I learned to overcome the fears that almost all of us have when it comes to speaking in front of an audience. And finally, I worked in 2 other organizations as the global director of marketing and sales. First, at a software company, the second largest software company in the world called Mises, which is still called Mises, by the way, and where I I was in charge of marketing and sales, and I made sure the entire sales force was retrained or trained. And to drive growth, the company increased in stock market value. The share price was at 1.5 when I joined. I wasn't the only one to have an impact on this company, but the sales growth during that period allowed the company to achieve a higher market value. So Mrs. I worked at Mrs. for, after 3 years, 2.5 years, I then went to Agrico, the leading manufacturer of products that provide energy and allow it to be rented temporarily. So large power generators, electricity generators, and big towers used to cool buildings. And once again, the company grew from 300 million to 500 million. During the time I was there, and stay friends, for those who want to start their own company, staying friends with your last employer is important. He became my first client, and thanks to that client, I got repeat business. So now, public speaking, how did that happen? At Xerox, I had 3 or 4 trainings with very well-known corporate institutions where I learned all the basics of public speaking. For example, and this is just a little tip I give to everyone here, I'm going to speak for X moments. And I'm going to look you in the eye. And to look you in the eye, I look right here at this little microphone consistently instead of looking at Ida, because then I wouldn't be connected with you anymore. Visual connection is extremely important. So you'll see me looking at this microphone and you'll feel like I'm looking at you constantly. So I trained at Xerox 3 or 4 times, but those are very corporate, very standard trainings. So public speaking is extremely important. And depending on the setting you're in, you have to adjust. It's you who has to adapt, not the audience. For example, right now, I'm speaking to you through a podcast. I'm in Dakar. Aida, where are you? Aida, where are you?
In England.
You're in England. And so through electronic media, I'm speaking to you, and to look at you, I keep looking at the camera, which gives you the impression that I'm looking at you all the time. So a little public speaking tip. So I was trained at Xerox 3 or 4 times, maybe even more, but with very standard trainings, very corporate trainings. How to present yourself, how to carry yourself, your neck, how to position your gaze, what gestures you should make, etc. That's all very good. That's the mechanics of public speaking. Where people really make a difference is when they're able to touch you emotionally. Those who are able to touch you, to move you emotionally, make all the difference. And for that, after my corporate experiences, I spent a lot of time with a few people whom you can also follow and you can go train with them. But you can also train with us at Acosphere. I'll talk more about that later. Tony Robbins. Of course, I even had the chance to do a bit of coaching with Tony Robbins. Andy Harrington. I do coaching for Andy Harrington. Lisa Nicholson. I took her online courses and I had the chance to spend a day with Les Brown. All these people are not very well known in the corporate world, but from the perspective of storytelling, from the perspective of human connection between 2 men or 2 women or a man and a woman, they are extraordinary. And so I learned true public speaking by investing more than 100 euro and spending over 4 months coaching for these people around the world. So in a few words, that's my story.
Wow, Gilles, that's remarkable. And the names you mentioned earlier, Les Brown, he's someone I really love. I actually listen to him almost every day for motivation and also, as you said, for storytelling. Because for him, actually, I think that's how he teaches. He doesn't just tell you, yes, do it like this. In fact, he gives you anecdotes, stories that you can actually remember. So I really like that. And Lisa Nicholson too, she's someone I really like. But as you said, I would actually recommend your training. If, for example, you really want to get started in this field, I think Gilles would be the right coach for you. Thank you. But of course, as he said, we'll talk about it a bit later to give you a bit more detail. So, Gilles, actually, I'd like to ask you this question because there are people at work, when you see them, they have this presence and they also have this ability to express themselves in a certain way. We're all there watching them like that, thinking one day I'd like to be like that. So is public speaking something? Is it a talent or is it a skill that can be developed over time?
In a way, it's both. But above all, it's a skill to be developed and one that can be developed over time. I'll give you just one example that will resonate with you. And I'm going to invite you to go and take a look. Mrs. Michelle Obama, during the period when she was First Lady of the United States, and look at what she's doing today. At the last Democratic convention, she was invited as a superstar, even more of a superstar than her husband. And today she has an ability to move you emotionally that is absolutely remarkable, unique. Michelle Obama is a great example of public speaking and a great example of developing a skill. It's not that she didn't have talent or wasn't capable from the start. She was a remarkable lawyer. However, it was her husband who was in the spotlight, and she had fully embraced her role as First Lady. She was in the background and didn't speak much. She spoke, but not too much. But on the other hand, from the moment the two of them left the context of the American presidency, she really let loose. As we say, she wrote her books. And when you write a book, that's something you've just done. I don't know if that's public yet. I don't know if I'm revealing something.
No. Actually, I have mentioned it, but well, right now I'm in the process of finishing the book, so it's not done yet.
All right. But when you write your book, like Michelle Obama, it's important to go speak on radio shows, on television, on radio sets, TV sets, to go talk to people, to talk about this book, because it's going to change the world in some way. And that's what she does remarkably well, whether it's with Oprah Winfrey or others. But if you want to see a masterclass in public speaking, go watch Michelle Obama's speech at last year's Democratic Convention, 2024 in August. Extraordinary. So some people are more talented than others. Americans, naturally, they're used to it from the time they're very young to speaking. My name is Michel Jackson and I'm the best in the world. They're 3 years old and they're already able to do that. Whereas in French or Francophone culture, somehow that desire to express oneself is somewhat stifled. Very early on, because when you're little, you don't talk to adults and so on. There are standards that end up limiting people. And in a way, psychologically, they're held back in their abilities.
So, for example, if you're not good at public speaking, you shouldn't think it's the end. What you mean is you can always work on it. And change that, become a good speaker. So if there's someone watching us who thinks, well, public speaking, never. Listen or listening, depends if. Actually, it's like you said, for me, for example, it really reminds me of my personality and also my background, because I'm a very reserved person. I don't talk much in social situations. I'm someone who, I listen a lot. I love listening. But speaking up actually doesn't come naturally to me. I'm not going to be the one who, for example, if we're in a social setting, I'm not going to be the one chatting away. No. I'll be the one listening. Or maybe I'll ask questions later, but I won't just start speaking up like that. So that's just how I am. So very early on, actually, when I was at university or at school in general, actually, I realized that, in fact, I couldn't stay like that because we always have assignments, presentations to do. And then in the business world as well, if you want to be recognized, if you want to share your ideas, it's unavoidable. You have to speak in public. So at that point, I forced myself in that regard. So I really pushed myself. And now, honestly, I think the next step, actually, like I was telling you, is going to be to take your course to really develop that and prepare ourselves. For my book, so if, for example, you're watching us and you don't have that self-confidence, just know that you're not the only one. You're not the only one in this situation. There are a lot of people, and already I think that just recognizing it, knowing that, if I could speak up actually in a way that's a bit more natural or a bit more eloquent, I don't know, whatever it is that's holding you back. So if I could do it that way, I could move forward in my career, or I would be better regarded in my community. Because you also have to understand that public speaking for us, actually here, we're talking about it in relation to the professional world, etc. But it's something you find everywhere. Whether you're in a small group, in your community, it's everywhere. So whether it's in a small group, again, or in the business world, it's better to be prepared, to know how to make an impact with your knowledge. So, Gilles, my next question is about the obstacles that the people you've trained encounter. Basically, what is it that holds them back?
So the obstacles, I'll just go back for a moment. since you mentioned my training, it will take place. The next session will be held. Make a note of it on May 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th at an absolutely wonderful location on Gorée Island in Senegal. And if by any chance you can, for one reason or another, make it to Senegal, we might consider your participation online by connecting online via Zoom or another platform. But don't hesitate, visit my websites, go to my LinkedIn page or my Instagram page, connect with me, and I will send you the exceptional promotion we are offering for this session. We've never had such a significant promotion before. Don't miss it. Don't miss this opportunity. So what are the obstacles? First, we have beliefs. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, where do our beliefs come from? So I'm going to give you a few examples. The origins of our beliefs. One origin of our beliefs is, quite simply, our environment. The environment we come from, what is the environment? It's our parents, it's the people around us, and it's also the culture of the country we live in. That's the environment. And if we're in a French-speaking culture, we're going to be a bit more constrained, more limited. Even in the way we speak, we tend to say, oh yes, no, but you can't, but be careful. And we are mentally conditioned to think that way. If we're in an American environment, we'll be in a culture where I was very surprised when I went to teach in the United States for 2 years. I spent a few days before the start of the academic year, and the entire administration, all the professors, everyone was telling the young Americans, if you need something, you can do it. If you need anything at all, we'll find a way to help you do it. The exact opposite of what happened when I started in Ep.29, my first year of university in France, where the professors told us we were all crazy and that we wouldn't be able to do anything. So totally different cultures. The environment, that's the first point. First statement, it's a belief. Our beliefs are connected to what we have learned through our environment. The second thing is institutions, religion, school, and the government of the countries you live in. We have friends in England who are from Uganda. And today, in 2025, when they talk about politics, they whisper because they're afraid someone will hear them and go tell the government that they're against it. They lived during the time of Idi Amin Dada, and even today, they are still traumatized by that period. So institutions can traumatize us. The third thing that traumatizes us is the media. And how much time do we spend on social media today? The media, of course, newspapers, they are dying a natural death, print newspapers, but they are becoming electronic newspapers. Television, the internet, social media, and also movies. Through movies, a lot of messages are conveyed that have an impact on us and that we then use either positively or negative. And finally, encounters quite simply the events of life. We may be part of a family that went through a divorce where the parents didn't get along, and that has an impact on us. All of this either represents ends in themselves or simply an open door to the liberation of speech for the individual. So these are the obstacles that are generally linked to the beliefs we hold, especially family, environment, and the media. And the encounters we have. But I would just like to talk about another point. In France, we talk a lot about eloquence. Eloquence, and I took out my notebook to give you the definition. Eloquence is the gift of speech, the ability to express oneself well. To speak with eloquence, with flair, that's the first definition. The second is the art of moving or persuading through speech. Political eloquence. Unfortunately, eloquence doesn't sell anything, ladies and gentlemen. Eloquence allows for only one thing: to have a beautiful flair, a beautiful way with words, a beautiful manner of speaking, to interest people, but only on a superficial level. Where you will make a difference is when you are able to truly touch people on an emotional level. When your word has an emotional reaction in your audience or among the people you're addressing, when it can help someone unlock something within themselves. And that is extremely important. So I've said a lot about the obstacles and also about the definition of eloquence, because eloquence is talked about a lot in France. And we remember the person who tells a story that moves us and connects to our own story, but we won't remember the person who tells a story that simply moves us. Very eloquent, who is a lawyer at the French Supreme Court.
I love your answer because I've known some, I've met people like that. You know, people, in fact, who read Marianne, they read Marianne and highlight all the words they didn't understand. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you start talking like that with your friends and you actually bring out expressions, verbs that you learned from Marianne, it can, personally, I felt it wasn't genuine and that it was a bit Well, it was weird. It was weird. So I agree with you. Eloquence, actually, speaking well, that can be good, but that's not all there is to it. Public speaking isn't just limited to that. There's more to it. And earlier too, when you talked about trauma that we can be victims of in our environment without even realizing it, it made me think of myself because I'm from Mayotte. And in Mayotte, it's a French island, but the problem is that with that, France, actually, we go to school, but they don't teach us our own history. We go to school and we don't even know how our ancestors managed to arrive on these islands. We actually know nothing. They don't tell us anything at school. At school, they'll talk to us about Napoleon, about Louis XIV, the history of France. I still think at the beginning, actually, as a little girl, I was already asking myself questions. I would say, wait, that's all well and good, all these people, Louis XIV and Napoleon. Napoleon, that's fine, but where are my ancestors, the people who look like me? I don't see anyone like that in this book. So even as a little girl, that led me, that planted an idea in my subconscious, like you're internal to these people. So I think that when you grow up with ideas like that, it can also really have an impact on you, especially when you eventually find yourself in a public setting, surrounded by others, maybe even people you don't know. Maybe you'll wonder, well, can I actually speak up and share your thoughts and feelings? Am I actually... It's true that it can have an effect. It can influence our personality and later on our ability to express ourselves with confidence. So I completely agree with you.
Let me just say one thing, thank you. And it's true for millions, even billions of people actually, who have a complex that's connected to what African Americans have recently called white privilege. I want to be very clear. And when I say white privilege, it's not just white people who have done this, but the West, especially European countries that colonized other parts of the world and believe they have a privilege over the rest of the world, primarily intellectual, often in the French-speaking world. That's what they say, but a privilege because they think they're more intelligent and so on. But these are just concepts that they have pushed and forced into the psyche of a certain number, a certain part of the population. In reality, there are no privileges. There are no people who are more or less intelligent than others. And with a different approach to the world and a true understanding of each people's history, you realize that there are great peoples everywhere. And in Mayotte, you surely have great peoples everywhere as well. I don't know enough about the history of Mayotte to speak about it, but I can talk about African history, which I still don't know not well enough, but I am researching it more and more to better understand who I am and where I come from. So a complex is something that holds us back and restricts us, especially when it comes to speaking in public.
You know, for me personally, I had to leave the Francophone world and come here to England to really understand. In fact, to understand what was happening inside me, to realize that actually this isn't normal. The fact that we go to school and I finish university, I got my master's degree, but I know nothing about my own history. So actually, when I realized that this was a problem, that's when I started doing research, learning about my own history myself. And that's when I realized that we have a rich history. So our history didn't begin when the white man, the European, arrived in Mayotte. So I think it's essential, first, to be able to analyze ourselves, to understand the nature of our own obstacles. Why is it that we have trouble, in fact, feeling legitimate in a way? Why is it that we can't manage to do certain things? Here we're talking about public speaking, but I think everything starts with self-knowledge, knowing who we are, our strengths and weaknesses, and so on. So that's it. I understand you. All right, yes.
Since you're talking about a really interesting conversation, I'll just jump in to mention that we do Instagram Lives. And about 2 weeks ago, I interviewed an extremely interesting man, Eric Bena. And his name comes from Danome, which is now Bena, and then a bit further than that. And he was saying precisely that in order to have. So we're talking about self-confidence. And in public speaking, there's a need for self-confidence. And to have self-confidence, you can't really achieve it unless you have self-knowledge. You really need to know who you are, where you come from, who we want to be, and not who you are supposed to be. Because we are influenced by a number of parameters and intellectual paradigms or by historical or scientific factors that have been imposed on us. Just as you would force feed a law, we've been made to think in a certain way, which isn't necessarily the way our brains are wired. Because historically, our ancestors maybe think differently. We are taught to think in a linear, systematic way. Whereas often in our civilizations, like in Chinese civilization, people think in a circular way. And time doesn't have the same value as it does in the Western world. So there are a lot of things to consider here. But to have self-confidence, you need self-knowledge. And to connect the two. Thank you, Eric. But in one for this information that I already knew, but which said the way you said it was extraordinary. There you go. I wanted to share that before you ask me the next question.
Well, about you mentioned LinkedIn earlier. I'll also include all the links that you're going to send me. That way, if you're interested, if you really want to keep learning and find out more about public speaking, just click on the links and check them out. Because recently I went to check out your Instagram account, you and your wife, and honestly, it's how can I put this? It's wonderful.
Thank you.
When the two of you are live together, the richness of the discussion, it's just, you really have to hear it to understand what I'm talking about. So at the very least, go check out their Instagram account and you'll see what I'm talking about. By the way, I remember seeing at one point, just as a little aside, there was, I don't think it was last year, but it was maybe it was in 2021 when I met you. And I went to take a look. I went to check out your Instagram account and your wife, honestly. So the storytelling, earlier you mentioned Michelle Obama. I actually thought you were going to talk about your wife. Honestly, the storytelling, wow. She told a story about a little girl, about a woman and her daughter. I still remember it, actually. It was so powerful. It was to illustrate one of the ideas that she had developed. And she shared that story, and it has always stuck with me. So go check out their Instagram account.
Yes, thank you much. She's great. Nadia is exceptional.
I don't know her personally, but honestly, from what I've seen, she is wonderful. Go check them out. There is a lot you can learn from that couple. So go ahead.
Thank you.
So, Gilles, for the next question, actually, up until now, we've talked about public speaking in a rather general way. That is to say, we've talked about the fact that it's essential, that it's not something innate. For some people, maybe it is. But in any case, it's a skill that can be developed over time. And now, actually, I'd like us to be a bit more practical, to give a few tips. I know we don't have much time, but actually, I just wanted to share a few very basic, straightforward tips for people who would like to start developing this important skill. Just a few simple ideas, really something that people can easily start doing right away when they speak in public, even if they're just beginning.
So I'll give a few, but I'll start by answering a question that's really burning on my tongue. Why is it essential? It's essential to know how to speak in public because you need to exist. Today, in the world we live in, if you don't know how to speak in public and emotionally connect with your audience, you won't exist, you'll be invisible. In meetings, people will pass the floor from one person to another. They'll half listen to you and then move on to someone else who has more presence than you. So you need to exist to be seen. You need to have a brand, a personal brand. And when you speak well, and especially when you move people because you're authentic, it's a show, public speaking is show business, but it's authentic show business. I want to emphasize this point because a lot of people, when they get the tools we give them through training, will put on a show just to be seen because they need recognition. That's not the place for it. When you're training people, you're there for the audience. I'm here for you, not for myself. I could be the most brilliant man in the world or the most insignificant. If I know how to express myself and convey a message, that makes the difference because you remember me. And so to be seen, to have a personal brand, to make an impact and transform your ecosystem, it's essential to have the necessary tools. And finally, to succeed professionally and simply to communicate well. So here are a few tips. The first is, above all, to be authentic. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. As Oscar Wilde told us, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. If you're someone who's funny, be funny. If you're someone who's serious, just be serious. Don't try to play a role. You learn through your beliefs, which we talked about earlier, to put on masks. Take off the masks, drop the masks. Because in any case, people will find you out. They will discover who you really are. It doesn't matter whether people like you or not. It doesn't matter if people spread lies or nonsense about you. If you are truly authentic, people will eventually know who you are. And one day they will even end up feeling ashamed they distanced themselves from you because they believed someone who told them nonsense, and then they won't know how to come back to you. Do you understand? So be authentic no matter what happens and strengthen your mindset. If you have an extraordinary mindset and you are honest with yourself and with others, nothing will be able to stop you. And your public speaking will be effective and impactful. Next, go and follow those who inspire you, those who are speakers, maybe especially female speakers, because there are more and more exceptional ones. I mentioned Michelle Obama, but I could talk about plenty of people. I could mention many English speakers. I could mention Oprah Winfrey in particular. I could talk about actresses, but also about Denzel Washington, who is an extraordinary writer. I could talk about businessmen. May he rest in peace. Steve Jobs, one of the greatest speakers in history, one of the best storytellers I know. I could talk about my friend and former colleague, Bill McDermott, who led SAP for more than 10 years, I believe, and who is an extraordinary speaker. Go check out all these people. They will inspire you. And there you have it. Authenticity is the little tip I'm giving you today. And learn to be yourself. We're taught so much to put on clothes, to wear masks that aren't really us. It's a burden. Free yourself from that and be truly authentic. That's what I can say to answer your question, my dear Ida.
That's wonderful. I love it. I love what you said, because it's true that nowadays people tend to hide, as you said, behind masks. And regarding the importance of public speaking, because you said something just now that made me think of Les Brown. Les Brown, I'll paraphrase him because I don't remember the exact quote, but basically he said, open your mouth and you tell the world who you are. Basically, as soon as you open your mouth, by the way you express yourself, people will know exactly who you are. So that's why it's actually really important to know how to introduce yourself, how to speak in a more effective way, so that it works for you instead of against you. So when you have the right techniques, when you know how to carry yourself, when you know, as you were saying earlier, where to look, because I remember when you said that, I was actually laughing to myself because at first my computer was over there. So if I look at the computer, you can see that I'm not looking at the camera, and the camera is here. So I had trouble keeping my eyes on the camera. I had trouble keeping my eyes on the camera. I found myself, because we're so used to looking at the people we're talking to, we look them in the eye. So I had trouble keeping my eyes on the camera. So already, honestly, for people who didn't know, that's really good. So as I was saying earlier, Les Brown, as soon as you open your mouth, you say a lot of things. It's not just the words you're saying, your body language, the way you hold yourself. A lot of things will reveal who you are, your personality, to the people who are listening to you or watching you. So it's really important to actually invest in trainings like this, because these opportunities can truly make a difference. And today I actually called on Gilles just to help us, to remind us all of the ongoing importance and value of public speaking Because once again, it's not just for those who want to become politicians or who are in entrepreneurship. Of course, for those people, there are no other options. You have to know how to address people, especially in sales, because Gilles talked a lot about sales. In the field of sales, public speaking is essential. If you don't know how to captivate the people listening to you, you've already lost. So, Gilles, honestly, I love this discussion with.
I just wanted to add one point about Les Brown, if you don't mind, Aida.
Okay.
Les Brown will tell you, you have greatness in you. You have greatness in you. You have stories to tell. Let it go. Let the story come out. He is extraordinary. Go see him. Go watch what he says. It's extraordinary. The little anecdote, Les Brown, did different things. He was in music. I think he was even the manager of a little group called the Jackson 5. But in any case, he did a lot in music and he wanted to speak in public. And one day he was at a conference. There were maybe 1,000 people in the room. There was someone speaking and saying, I am who you want to be. I may not be the best speaker, but you paid to come and speak. He may speak. Among you, there are many people who would like to be who I am, but very few will become who I am. So I am who you want to be. The person said to Les Brown and 1,000 people, you are who I would like. I am who you would like to be. I may not be the best speaker, but you pay to come and see me. So I am who you wish to be. Among you, there are many people who would like to be public speakers. I may not be the best speaker, but you paid to see me. Some of you dream of becoming speakers. And Les Brown said to himself, no, I've been saying I have to become a speaker. And he started doing just that. Today, he is immensely wealthy, thanks to public speaking. He keeps doing it, but not for wealth or money. He does it because he loves transforming people. And he has extraordinary generosity. I have a few friends who see him regularly and he helps them. He even goes on their podcasts. The simplicity of this man is truly remarkable.
You also talked about authenticity. When I think of Les Brown, he's someone, I feel like the person we see in the videos, go to the public person. I think he's the same person in private as well. He's someone, I don't know, he laughs, he doesn't hold back. He expresses himself. It's really the way he laughs. I love it. Anyway, go check out Les Brown if you don't know who we're talking about. But as Gilles said, don't try to become someone else. Stay authentic. We need your personality. If you decide to develop yourself as a speaker in public speaking, if one day people see you on TV, in videos, etc., let them see the real person, not a copy of someone else. So there you go. Stay authentic. So Gilles, we've talked about training throughout. We've talked a bit about the training, but can we take a few minutes here for you to tell us what we can? Of course, we'll definitely learn public speaking in the training, but could you possibly give us just a few more details so we know what to expect, generally speaking, from the training?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I won't give you the agenda because the training we offer has a structure that is nothing like what you learned in school or at university. It has a completely not innovative because other people do it as well. We learned it from Tony Robbins, among others. Tony Robbins, he keeps someone engaged in his course for 40 to 50 hours and people are full of energy. But there is no agenda. There is no agenda. And yet people follow the course, learn a tremendous amount and are transformed. Okay. But the things you will learn, first of all, are public speaking. It's one of humanity's greatest fears. And in the French-speaking world in particular, children are taught from a very young age to be afraid of speaking in public. They are constantly told, be quiet. In the English-speaking world, they are encouraged to express themselves. Certain factors like beliefs make you more or less likely to speak in public. When I was younger, I was very shy. People often don't believe it today, but I was very shy. I'm still a rather reserved person in general. But that doesn't stop me today from being able to express myself with energy, with emphasis, and to have that authenticity that allows me to touch people's emotions, to know how to use my voice to convey different emotions at different moments. So if you have any obstacles, come take the public speaking course. If you have questions, if you're always someone who, like Descartes, thinks things over and says to yourself, I should do it, but, or yes, no, but have the courage, gather your courage for tomorrow, take a little bit of your savings if you need to, and sign up to take this course. If you want to become like a certain lady who once told us, when you come to Abidjan in 2016, come see me because I am very well known as someone who works in communication, but I am absolutely terrified of speaking in public. I will name this person at the end because she gave me permission. She attended our course in February 2017 in Abidjan and returned for the second session in May 2017 in Abidjan. She worked with the tools we shared with her, and at the end of the first course, we told her, you know, you will become an international speaker. Since Nadia and I are older than her, in Africa, we respect our elders. Same in Mayotte. She didn't say what she thought, but then she thought we were crazy. These two people I invited to a maki in Abidjan, to whom I said, I'm afraid of public speaking. After one class, they say I'll be an international speaker, but they don't care. 2 years later, when she became an international speaker, being paid to speak in public, with flights often covered in first class, to speak in front of audiences of 10, 20, 100, 1,000 people, she realized we had seen something in her that she hadn't seen. Today, she is one of the most sought after speakers, one of the most impactful women. She often appears in rankings listing her as one of the African women changing the world. Her name is Nabu Four. This is just one example. We have trained over 7,000 people in Africa and more than 20 to 25,000 people worldwide through public speaking and other trainings. So we have real expertise, and we use tools from neuroscience and neuropsychology that allow you to truly internalize what we teach you and then use it sustainably over the long term. There you have it. 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th of May 2025 in Gorée. Aida will share the links.
You know, when you were talking about that woman you trained, it made me think of Missy Elliott. Because recently, actually, I saw a podcast where she talked about a panic attack she had just before a concert. I thought to myself, wait, Missy Elliott, panic attack? Actually, we see people like that who speak out for her. Well, that's the show. I mean, it's the same thing. Being in front of an audience and doing something actually is not easy. So when I saw that, even she actually, because she, when you look at her, at least the persona or the character we've been shown, she doesn't seem to be shy or reserved. You get the impression that she's always been like that her whole life. But when she was talking on this podcast about who she really is, in other words, just a regular person like everyone else, who also has that fear. All those years, actually, before going on stage, before going up to do her show, she used to have anxiety attacks. So if you're sitting there thinking, me, I can't even say a word when I'm in front of an audience, once again, that's something you can work on. And as Gilles said, there's the training that's coming up, so don't hesitate. For me, investing in training like this is really an investment that will, first of all, you're going to discover a lot about yourself, because as we've emphasized, self-knowledge is something very important. In the training, you learn to understand yourself better and also to free yourself so you can move toward your dreams, run toward your dreams, because I'm sure that, like everyone else, like me, you have dreams in mind, and maybe it's public speaking that's holding you back. So don't hesitate. I'll include all the information that Gilles sends me. I'll put it in the description. So don't hesitate. Click on it and join the training. All right. So Gilles, just one last thing before we finish the session. Actually, I love books. I love books. I love reading, and I know you do too. Can you tell us what your favorite book is and why?
Would you allow me to make an exception? Instead of talking about just one favorite book, I'd like to mention several.
That's even better.
Great. So one of my favorite books is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Because it's a spiritual book, I make a distinction between a religious book and a spiritual book. Religious books are the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the Bhagavad Gita, and other such books. Khalil Gibran's book is a philosophical book, a spiritual book that actually gives you inspiration and aspirations for things you might not necessarily think about every day. It's a book you can come back to 21 times. Then in the same vein, in terms of a book that inspires you to go further, there is Hermann Hesse's book, Siddhartha. It's a very beautiful book. It's a novel. It's the story of a person who embarks on a spiritual journey in life, facing the obstacles that life brings. But truly, it's a wonderful book by Hermann Hesse. There are also books in the business field that interest and fascinate me, especially the books by Spencer Johnson. First, Who Moved My Cheese? You can read it in an hour or two. Who Stole My Cheese in French? Who Moved My Cheese? But the iceberg is melting. I think that's one of his other books that he wrote and that I really like. If you want to know how people create value in companies, go read the books by Jim Collins, especially From Good to Great by Jim Collins, which was published by Harvard Press, I believe. There are also some graphic novels that are wonderful. And I'm currently finishing reading one. I've been reading it for a long time. I read it in small bits. It's a book that a very dear friend recommended to us 2 summers ago when we were at their place. And I'm thinking of her right now. This year, it's called The Endless World by Jankovici and Blaine. The Endless World is actually a graphic novel that explains the world through all the scientific elements that might be interesting. And it explains them in a very rational and precise way, but with a lot of humor. And it's by Jankovici and Blaine, The Endless World. So those are a few works I wanted to share with you. Otherwise, of course, the Bible, the Quran, and those kinds of works are also a huge source of inspiration.
Great. Gilles, thank you very much. I'm going to order all of them because, for one thing, spirituality. By the way, that's something I mentioned in my book. I didn't want to talk about it, but, well, spirituality has a big impact on me. I had my spiritual awakening about 3 years ago, and it was very intense, if I can put it that way. So actually, that's what inspired me to work on my book. And by the way, it's a collection of poetry. I've always written poems since university, but now actually I found that since my spiritual awakening, it's more like messages, downloads, as they say, that come to me. So I told myself I can't keep this just for myself. Of course, that's not the only thing in the collection. I talk about other things too, but I would say about 70% of the poems are about spirituality. So thank you for sharing all these books with us. I'm going to order them and read them. So thank you, Gilles.
Let us know when your book is published so we can buy it.
All right. I won't forget. So Gilles, I won't keep you too long because I know you have a lot to do. And today, honestly, once again, I am honored by this gesture, knowing that you have so much on your plate. You're a very busy man. So thank you very much, Gilles, and see you very soon.
Thank you very much, Aida.